The scent of blood reached her first, carried on the wind that whispered through the silver birches like a prayer for the dying. Mira Nightwind stopped in her tracks, her basket of night-blooming herbs trembling in her hands as the metallic tang mixed with something else, something wild and intoxicating that made her wolf stir restlessly beneath her skin. The moon hung heavy and full above the forest canopy, casting shadows that danced like specters between the ancient trees, and in that moment, she knew her solitary life was about to shatter like ice beneath a wolf's paw. She should have turned back. Every instinct screamed at her to return to the safety of her small cottage at the edge of Nightwind territory, to pretend she had smelled nothing, seen nothing. An Omega alone in the deep woods at night was vulnerable, a temptation to rogues and rivals alike. But Mira had never been good at listening to the voice of caution, especially when someone needed help. Her father had called it a fatal flaw. Her pack had called it foolishness. She called it the only thing that made her feel truly alive. The trail of blood led her deeper into the forest, where the trees grew so thick that moonlight barely penetrated the canopy. Her white hair seemed to glow in the darkness, a beacon that would draw attention she did not want, but she pulled her cloak tighter and pressed forward. The forest floor was soft with moss and fallen leaves, muffling her footsteps as she followed the crimson path that spoke of violence and desperation. She found him collapsed against the massive trunk of an ancient oak, his body half hidden in shadow. Even unconscious and wounded, he was formidable, tall, powerfully built, with long black hair that fell across a face carved from stone and dreams. Blood soaked through his torn shirt, dark and glistening in the filtered moonlight, and deep claw marks scored his chest and shoulder. But it was not the wounds that made Mira's breath catch in her throat. It was the raw power that radiated from him even in unconsciousness, an authority that pressed against her senses like a physical weight. He was an alpha. Not just any alpha, but something more. Something that made her Omega instincts war between submission and an inexplicable pull that felt like destiny reaching out with inevitable hands. Mira knelt beside him, her hands already moving to assess his injuries. His skin was fever-hot beneath her fingertips, and she could see the telltale signs of silver poisoning in the blackened edges of his wounds. Someone had wanted him dead, had hunted him with weapons designed to kill their kind. Her heart clenched with an emotion she could not name, a fierce protectiveness that rose up from somewhere primal and undeniable. "Get him home," her wolf urged. "Protect. Heal. Ours." The thought should have terrified her. She did not know this man, did not know if he was friend or foe, hero or monster. But when she touched his face, when her fingers traced the hard line of his jaw through the thick beard that covered it, something inside her recognized him, something ancient and absolute that transcended logic and fear. He was heavier than he looked, solid muscle and alpha strength, but desperation gave Mira power she did not know she possessed. She managed to get him upright, his arm draped across her shoulders, his weight pressing against her side as she half carried, half dragged him through the forest. Every step was agony, every breath a labor, but she did not stop, could not stop. The bond she felt forming between them, thin and fragile as spider silk but growing stronger with every heartbeat, pulled her forward like a lodestone pointing north. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from and how old you are. I hope you enjoy the story. Her cottage appeared through the trees like a sanctuary, small and weathered but home. She had lived here alone for 3 years, ever since the pack had made it clear that an Omega without family, without value, was a burden they tolerated rather than embraced. The isolation had been lonely at first, crushing in its completeness, but she had learned to find peace in solitude, to fill her days with healing herbs, and her nights with books, and dreams of a life that could never be hers. Now that solitude was ending, and she was not certain if she felt terror or relief, she managed to get him inside, laying him carefully on her narrow bed. The cottage was simple. 1 room with a fireplace, a small kitchen area, shelves lined with dried herbs and bottles of tinctures, and the bed that now held a stranger who smelled like pine forests and thunderstorms, and something uniquely, devastatingly male. Mira lit candles, their warm glow pushing back the darkness, and set about gathering what she needed to tend his wounds. The water she heated over the fire soon steamed in a basin, and she added herbs with practiced efficiency, yarrow and comfrey, calendula and sage. She had learned the healing arts from her grandmother, the only person who had ever truly seen her, truly valued her gifts. Those skills had kept her alive and given her purpose when the pack made her feel worthless. Now they might save the life of the most magnificent man she had ever seen. Carefully, reverently, she cut away his ruined shirt, revealing a torso that looked carved from granite, all hard muscle and battle scars. But it was the fresh wounds that concerned her, deep gouges that still oozed blood despite her wolf's natural healing trying to close them. The silver had to be drawn out first, or the poison would spread, would consume him from within. Mira worked with steady hands, cleaning each wound, applying poultices that would draw out the toxin. She murmured prayers her grandmother had taught her, old words in the old tongue that spoke of healing and protection. The man, this stranger, this Alpha, who called to her soul, did not wake, but his breathing grew steadier, less labored, and the fever flush began to fade from his skin. Hours passed. The candles burned low, casting dancing shadows on the rough wooden walls. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the trees like a wolf mourning its pack. Mira finished bandaging the last wound and sat back, exhaustion making her bones feel like water. But she could not rest. Not yet. She needed to watch him, to make sure the healing took hold, to be there if he woke. And if he woke as an enemy, if she had brought danger into her sanctuary, then she would face that when it came. She pulled a chair close to the bed and settled into it, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. The fire crackled softly, filling the cottage with warmth and the scent of burning pine. For the first time in years, her home did not feel empty. It felt alive, charged with possibility and peril in equal measure. Mira studied the man's face in the firelight. Even in sleep, even wounded and vulnerable, there was a hardness to him, a savagery barely contained beneath the surface. His features were aristocratic, all sharp angles and strong lines, but there was a sensuality to his mouth that made her stomach flutter, with an awareness she had never felt before. His beard was thick and well-kept, his hair long enough to brush his shoulders, and she found herself wanting to run her fingers through it, to see if it was as soft as it looked. The thought made heat rise to her cheeks. She should not be thinking such things about a stranger, especially an alpha stranger who radiated power and danger. But there was no denying the pull she felt, the way her wolf paced restlessly inside her, wanting to be closer, wanting to claim and be claimed in return. "Mate," her wolf whispered. "Ours." Mira shook her head, trying to dispel the notion. Fate mates were rare, so rare that many believed them to be nothing more than legend, stories told to comfort lonely wolves who would never find true love. And even if they existed, surely the universe would not be so cruel as to bind her to someone she had just met, someone whose very presence in her home could bring disaster down upon her. Yet she could not deny what she felt, that invisible thread connecting them, growing stronger with every moment, until she could almost feel his pain as her own, his life force as an extension of hers. The night deepened. Mira dozed fitfully, jerking awake at every sound, every shift of the man in her bed. Just before dawn, when the sky beyond her window began to lighten from black to deep purple, he stirred. His breathing changed, quickened, and his eyes opened. They were amber, those eyes, bright as molten gold, burning with an intensity that stole her breath and held it captive. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, hunter and healer, Alpha and Omega, two souls suspended in a moment that felt eternal. Then he moved, a blur of motion despite his injuries, and suddenly she was pinned against the wall, his hand at her throat, not squeezing but holding, dominating. His face was inches from hers, and she could feel the heat of his breath on her skin, could see the feral gleam in his eyes that spoke of a predator not fully returned to reason. Terror should have consumed her. Instead, she felt only a strange calm, and beneath it, a thrilling excitement that made her wolf purr with satisfaction. "Do not show fear," she told herself. "Do not run." She met his eyes steadily, her voice soft but unwavering when she spoke. "I am not your enemy. You were wounded. I brought you here to heal." He said nothing, but his eyes raked over her face, searching for deception, for threat. His hand remained at her throat, feeling her pulse beat against his palm, and she saw the exact moment awareness flooded back, the moment he truly saw her. His eyes widened fractionally. His grip loosened but did not release, and she watched something like wonder chase the savagery from his expression. "You," he said, his voice rough with disuse and something deeper, something that resonated through her like a struck chord. "You saved me." It was not a question, but she answered anyway. "You would have died. The silver poisoning, the wounds, they were too severe." "Silver," he repeated, and fury flashed across his features, turning them harsh and terrible. "Treachery. Assassination." He released her abruptly, stepping back, and she saw him sway slightly, the movement betraying his weakness. Without thinking, she reached out to steady him, her hands gripping his arm, and the contact sent electricity racing through her veins, a connection so profound it made her gasp. He felt it too. She saw it in the way his eyes darkened, in the sharp intake of breath, in the way his entire body went rigid with recognition. "Who are you?" he demanded, but his voice had gentled, the command now edged with wonder rather than threat. "Mira Nightwind," she whispered. "I am Omega of the Nightwind Pack, or I was. I live alone now." His hand came up, cupping her face with a tenderness that seemed impossible from someone who had held her by the throat moments before. His thumb traced her cheek, and she saw him tremble with the restraint it took not to pull her closer. "Mira," he said, testing her name on his tongue, making it sound like a prayer. "I am Darius Wolfguard." The name hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth, horror and disbelief warring within her. "The Alpha King," she breathed. "You are the Alpha King of the Wolfguard Pack." He inclined his head, never breaking eye contact, and she saw pride there, and power, but also a vulnerability that shocked her to her core. "The same," he confirmed. "Though at this moment, I am merely a man who owes his life to the most beautiful woman he has ever seen. Beautiful." The word seemed absurd. She was small, slight, her white hair and pale skin marking her as different, other, a ghost among wolves. But when he looked at her, she felt beautiful, felt seen in a way she had never experienced before. Reality crashed down on her then, brutal and unforgiving. This was Darius Wolfguard, king of the pack that had been rivals, enemies even, with her own for generations. The blood feud between Wolfguard and Nightwind was legendary, soaked in centuries of violence and betrayal. If her pack discovered she had sheltered him, saved him, they would call it treason. They would cast her out, or worse. And if his pack discovered that their king had been saved by a Nightwind, that he was vulnerable, weakened, here in enemy territory, the consequences would be catastrophic. "I should not have brought you here," she said, panic rising in her chest. You cannot stay, if anyone finds out. Mira." He said her name like a command and a caress at once, and she fell silent, looking up at him helplessly. "Come here," he said, and it was not a request. She should have refused, should have demanded he leave, should have recognized the danger and chosen self-preservation over the magnetic pull that drew her to him. But she was an Omega, and he was an Alpha, and more than that, he was her mate. She knew it with a certainty that defied logic, knew it in the marrow of her bones and the howl of her wolf. She crossed the small space between them, and when he pulled her into his arms, when his lips claimed hers in a kiss that tasted of desperation and destiny, she surrendered to the inevitable. The kiss was everything. It was fire and ice, violence and tenderness, the collision of two souls that recognized each other across time and space. His hands tangled in her white hair, holding her as if she might disappear, and she pressed against him, feeling the hard planes of his body, the strength barely leashed beneath his skin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers, and she felt the tremor that ran through him, the war between desire and duty that raged within his heart. "I have dreamed of you," he confessed, his voice raw with emotion. "For years, I have dreamed of a woman with moonlight hair and eyes like winter storms. I thought you were a phantom, a torture sent to remind me of what I could never have. But you are real. You are here. And you are mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have offended her. Instead, it made her feel claimed, cherished, as if she finally belonged to someone, to something. "I felt it the moment I touched you," she admitted. "The bond, the connection. It terrifies me." "As it should," Darius said, pulling back to look at her fully. "What lies between us is both gift and curse, Mira. I am Alpha King of the Wolfguard Pack. You are Omega of the Nightwind Pack. Our people have been enemies for longer than either of us has been alive. This, what we feel, what we are to each other, it is forbidden, impossible. Then why does it feel like the only thing in my life that has ever been right?" she asked, tears burning in her eyes. "Why does it feel like I have been waiting my entire existence to find you?" His control shattered. She saw it happen, saw the careful mask he wore crack and fall away, revealing the man beneath the king. He kissed her again, harder this time, claiming her mouth with a hunger that spoke of starvation and need. His hands roamed her body, reverent and possessive at once, and she responded with a fervor that shocked her, her fingers digging into his shoulders, her body arching into his touch. They stumbled toward the bed, a tangle of limbs and wanting, and it was only when his wounds reopened, blood seeping through the bandages, that sanity returned. "You are still healing," Mira gasped, pushing against his chest, forcing distance between them, even as every cell in her body screamed for closeness. "You need rest, need time for your body to recover," Darius growled, a sound of pure frustration, but he allowed her to guide him back to the bed. He sat heavily, and she saw the pain that flickered across his features, quickly suppressed. She knelt before him, checking the bandages, her hands gentle as she examined the damage. The wounds had not torn completely, but blood darkened the white cloth, and she knew she needed to redress them. "You are going to be the death of me, woman," Darius said, his hand finding her hair, threading through the silken strands. "But what a glorious death it will be." "Do not speak of death," Mira said fiercely. "Not when I just found you." His eyes softened, and he cupped her face again, that gesture she was already coming to crave. "Then speak to me of life," he said. "Tell me who you are, Mira Nightwind. Tell me how an Omega came to live alone in the forest, far from her pack." It was not a story she liked to tell, a tale of rejection and isolation that still carried the power to wound. But something about Darius, about the way he looked at her with complete focus, as if she was the only thing in his world that mattered, made her want to share her truth. She began to remove the soiled bandages, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she spoke. "I was born the youngest of 5 children, the only Omega in a family of Alphas and Betas. My father was Beta to the Nightwind Alpha, a position of honor, and my siblings all followed in his footsteps, strong and capable and valued. But I was different. Small, fragile, my wolf weak compared to theirs. I was seen as a disappointment, a flaw in an otherwise perfect bloodline. Her voice remained steady, but Darius heard the pain beneath the words. His hand found hers, squeezing gently, offering comfort without interrupting her story. My grandmother was the only one who saw me as more than my designation. She taught me the healing arts, showed me that strength comes in many forms. When she died, I lost my only protector, my only champion. The pack, my own family. They made it clear that I was a burden. So I left. I built this cottage at the edge of our territory, far enough that I would not be a constant reminder of their shame, close enough that I was still technically pack. Fools, Darius said, his voice hard with anger. Blind, ignorant fools to fail to see your worth. Mira looked up at him, surprised by the vehemence in his tone. You do not know me, she said softly. You know nothing of my worth. I know you risked your life to save a stranger, he countered. I know you have the skill and knowledge to draw silver from wounds, to heal what should have killed me. I know you live in courage and solitude rather than accept rejection as your truth. And I know that when I look at you, when I touch you, I feel whole for the first time in my existence. That is all I need to know. The words undid her. Mira felt tears spill down her cheeks, hot and unstoppable, and she did not try to hide them. Darius pulled her up, drawing her onto the bed beside him, cradling her against his chest, as if she was something precious and breakable. Your turn, she said, when the tears had passed, when she had regained some measure of composure. Tell me who you are, Darius Wolfguard. Tell me how the Alpha King came to be bleeding and alone in Nightwind Forest. His arms tightened around her, and she felt the tension that suddenly gripped his body. I was betrayed, he said simply. Someone in my own pack, someone I trusted, tried to end my reign. They lured me into the forest with reports of rogue activity, then ambushed me with silver weapons and enough fighters to bring down an army. I fought, killed most of them, but the silver, it weakens us in ways that cannot be overcome by strength alone. I fled, knowing I was dying, seeking only to put distance between myself and my pack, so my death would not bring them shame. Who? Mira demanded, fury igniting in her chest. Who would dare betray their Alpha King? That is what I must discover, Darius said grimly. But it is someone high in my court, someone with access to my movements, my plans, someone who wants power enough to commit the ultimate treachery. We must get you back to your pack, Mira said, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. You are their king. They need you. Not yet, Darius said, and there was a command in his voice that brooked no argument. I am still healing, still vulnerable. If I return now, weakened, whoever betrayed me will strike again, and next time, they will not fail. I need time to recover my strength, to plan my response. You cannot stay here, Mira protested. If my pack discovers you, they will kill you. The feud between Wolfguard and Nightwind, it is ancient and absolute. Your presence here is a death sentence for us both. Then we will be careful, Darius said. A few days, no more. Until I am strong enough to defend myself. To defend you. The way he said it, as if defending her was as natural as breathing, made her heart ache with a longing she had spent years denying. Why? She asked. Why would you risk so much for me? We have known each other for mere hours. Because you are mine, he said simply. Because from the moment I opened my eyes and saw you, my wolf recognized its mate. Because the bond between us is not something I can deny or resist, even if I wanted to. And I do not want to, Mira. I want you with a ferocity that terrifies me. I want to claim you, mark you, make you mine in every way possible. But more than that, I want to protect you, to see you smile, to give you the life you deserve. His words were a confession and a promise, a declaration that should have been impossible given their circumstances. But Mira felt the truth of them resonate through the bond, felt his sincerity like a physical touch. "This is madness," she whispered. "We are from enemy packs. This can never work." "Then we will make it work," Darius said fiercely. "I am Alpha King. I have the power to end the feud, to forge a new path. And I will, if it means I can have you." She wanted to believe him, wanted to surrender to the hope that bloomed in her chest, like flowers after a long winter. But she had learned not to trust in happy endings, had learned that wanting something desperately did not make it possible. "Rest," she said, deflecting rather than arguing. "You are still healing, and this conversation can wait until you are stronger." Darius looked as if he wanted to argue, but exhaustion was clearly taking its toll. The fighting, the flight, the blood loss, all of it had drained him in ways that even his alpha strength could not overcome. He settled back against the pillows, but his hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. "Stay with me," he said. "Please." How could she refuse? Mira lay down beside him, her head resting on his shoulder, and for the first time in 3 years, she did not feel alone. They slept as the sun rose, two souls tangled together against the world. When Mira woke, it was to the sensation of fingers running through her hair, a gentle rhythmic motion that was both soothing and arousing. She opened her eyes to find Darius watching her, his amber gaze soft with an emotion that made her breath catch. "How long have you been awake?" she asked, her voice husky with sleep. "Hours," he admitted. "I have been watching you, memorizing every detail, every expression. You are even more beautiful when you sleep, did you know that? Peaceful, unguarded. I could watch you for eternity and never grow tired of it." His words were poetry, romance of a kind she had only read about in books. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, felt shy and uncertain, in a way that was new, and not entirely unpleasant. "You should not say such things," she murmured. "Why not?" "It is the truth." "Because it makes me hope," she confessed. "And hope is dangerous." "Hope is all we have," Darius countered. "Hope and this connection between us that defies everything we have been taught to believe." He shifted, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his healing wounds, and Mira immediately sat up, her hands going to his chest, checking the bandages with professional detachment even as her heart raced at the contact. "You are healing well," she observed, "faster than I expected. By tomorrow, the wounds should be closed enough that you can move without risk of reopening them." "Good," Darius said. "Then tomorrow, we will talk of the future, of how to make this work despite the odds against us." Mira said nothing, but inside, her wolf howled with longing and fear in equal measure. They spent the day in quiet domesticity, a strange bubble of normalcy in the midst of chaos. Mira prepared food, simple but nourishing, and Darius ate with an appetite that spoke of healing. They talked, sharing stories of their childhoods, their packs, their dreams. She learned that beneath the fierce exterior, beneath the mantle of Alpha King, Darius was a man who loved deeply, who valued loyalty above all else, who had sacrificed personal happiness for the good of his pack time and time again. He learned that Mira was stronger than she appeared, that her gentle nature hid a core of steel, that she had survived rejection and isolation, not by becoming hard, but by remaining soft, by choosing compassion over bitterness. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Darius stood and walked to the window, looking out at the forest that surrounded them. Mira joined him, standing close but not touching, and for a long moment, they simply watched the day surrender to night. I have been alone for so long, Darius said quietly. Surrounded by my pack, by advisors and warriors and wolves who would die for me, and yet completely alone. I thought that was my fate, the price of being king. But now I wonder if I was simply waiting for you. I am nobody, Mira said. An Omega without status, without family who claims me. What can I possibly offer an Alpha King? Everything, Darius said, turning to face her. You offer me everything. He pulled her into his arms, and this time when he kissed her, it was not with the desperate hunger of before, but with a tenderness that broke her heart and mended it in the same breath. His lips moved against hers, worshipping, claiming, promising things that words could never capture. When they parted, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers, his hands framing her face. I need to tell you something, he said. Something I have told no one. Mira waited, sensing the gravity in his tone. The assassination attempt, it was not the first. There have been others, more subtle, spread over the past year. Accidents that were not accidents. Poisoned food that I did not eat. A mad wolf released during a hunt that tried to take me down. I have been investigating, trying to discover who wants me dead, but they are clever, covering their tracks. Who do you suspect? Mira asked. My cousin, he said heavily. Marcus Bloodfang. He is my heir, the one who would take the crown if I were to die without producing an heir of my own. He has always been ambitious, always chafed at being second rather than first. I have no proof, nothing concrete, but my instincts tell me he is behind this. Then you must be careful, Mira said fiercely. You must protect yourself. I will, Darius promised. But first, I must heal. And then I will return and deal with the traitor in my midst. The thought of him leaving, of this fragile bubble of happiness bursting, filled Mira with a grief so profound it stole her breath. But she knew it was inevitable. He was a king. He had responsibilities, a pack that needed him. She was a fantasy, a stolen moment that could never become a forever. As if reading her thoughts, Darius pulled her closer, his voice fierce when he spoke. Do not think I am leaving you behind. Where I go, you go. You are my mate, Mira. My queen, if you will have me. Queen, she repeated, the word foreign on her tongue. I cannot be queen. I am Nightwind. Your pack will never accept me. Then they will learn, Darius said with absolute conviction. I am their king, and I choose you. Anyone who cannot accept that will be dealt with. And my pack? Mira asked. The Nightwinds will see this as the ultimate betrayal. They will hunt me, will demand my blood for breaking the sacred laws that forbid unions between our peoples. Then we will unite the packs, Darius said. We will end the feud once and for all, forge a new alliance built on our bond. It will not be easy. There will be resistance, but I believe it is possible. I have to believe it, because the alternative, a life without you, is unthinkable. His determination, his absolute certainty, it was intoxicating. Mira wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that love could overcome centuries of hatred and violence. But she was pragmatic enough to know that the path ahead would be soaked in blood and tears. They will try to kill me, she said softly. Both packs. They will see me as a traitor, a threat to everything they hold sacred. I will kill anyone who tries to harm you, Darius said. And there was a darkness in his voice, a promise of violence that was somehow comforting, rather than terrifying. You are mine, Mira, mine to protect, mine to cherish. And I protect what is mine with every weapon at my disposal. She believed him, saw the truth of it in the amber fire of his eyes, in the way his body tensed with barely leashed aggression at the mere thought of her in danger. This man, This king would burn down the world to keep her safe. It was terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely certain. "Make love to me," she said, the words escaping before she could think better of them. "Please, Darius, I need to feel you, to know this is real." For a moment she thought he would refuse, thought his control would win out over desire. But then he was lifting her, carrying her to the bed, with a reverence that made tears burn in her eyes. He laid her down gently, his hands trembling as they began to undress her, as if she was something holy he feared to profane. "Are you certain?" he asked, his voice rough with need. "Once I claim you, once we complete the bond, there is no going back. You will be mine in every way, bound to me by ties that cannot be broken." "I am certain," Mira said. "I have never been more certain of anything." What followed was a claiming, a possession, a surrender so complete that Mira lost all sense of where she ended and Darius began. His touch was both gentle and demanding, his kisses a brand that marked her soul. He worshipped her body with a devotion that made her feel like a goddess, and when he finally made her his, when they joined in the most intimate of ways, the bond between them blazed to life, a connection so profound it stole her breath and remade her from the inside out. She felt his heart as her own, felt his strength flowing through her veins, felt the love that consumed him like a living fire. And she gave him everything in return, holding nothing back, offering her entire being to this man, this mate, this impossible love that had found her in the darkness and refused to let her go. When it was over, when they lay tangled together in the aftermath, both trembling with the magnitude of what had passed between them, Darius pressed a kiss to her forehead and spoke words that were both a prayer and a vow. "You are my heart, Mira, my soul, my reason for existing. I will move heaven and earth to keep you safe, to give you the life you deserve. This I swear on my life, on my crown, on everything I hold sacred." And Mira, who had spent years believing she was nothing, who had been taught that an Omega had no value, no purpose beyond serving others, felt the chains of her past shatter. In this man's arms, she was not a burden. She was treasured. She was loved. She was home. The next 3 days passed in a haze of healing and discovery. Darius grew stronger each day, his wounds closing until they were nothing but pale scars on his bronzed skin. They spent their time talking, making love, planning a future that seemed impossible, but grew more real with every shared touch, every whispered confession. Mira learned that Darius was not just fierce, but also kind, that he had a wicked sense of humor that could make her laugh until her sides ached. She learned that he loved to read, that he played the piano with surprising skill, that he had a soft spot for children and secretly fed the stray dogs that wandered near his packlands. Darius learned that Mira sang when she cooked, that she had a gift for seeing the good in people, that she was far braver than she believed herself to be. He learned that she dreamed of a world where pack politics did not determine worth, where Omegas were valued for their gentleness rather than dismissed for their perceived weakness. They were falling deeper in love with every passing hour, the bond between them growing stronger until Mira could feel Darius even when they were in different rooms, could sense his moods and emotions as clearly as her own. But reality had a way of intruding on even the most perfect moments. On the 4th morning, as dawn broke pale and cold over the forest, a howl shattered the peace, a sound of warning and rage that made Mira's blood run cold. Her pack. They had found them. Darius was on his feet instantly, his body coiled for battle, his eyes glowing with alpha fire. He moved to the window, and Mira saw his jaw clench as he took in what lay beyond. "How many?" she asked, fear a cold fist around her heart. 20, maybe more, Darius said grimly. "They are surrounding the cottage." Her pack had come in force, and they had not come to talk. Mira moved to stand beside him, and through the window she saw them. Wolves in human and animal form, circling the cottage like predators scenting blood. At their head stood her brother Cale, his face twisted with fury and disgust. "Traitor!" he roared, his voice carrying clearly through the thin walls. "You dare shelter a wolf guard? You dare betray your own blood?" "He is my mate," Mira called back, moving to the door despite Darius trying to pull her back. "The bond has spoken." "I cannot deny it." "Liar," Cale spat. "Omegas do not have mates. You are delusional, corrupted by the enemy. Come out now, and we will make your death quick. If you want her, you will have to go through me," Darius said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "And I promise you, I will paint the forest red with the blood of anyone who tries." A murmur ran through the gathered wolves, uncertainty and fear mixing with anger. They recognized him, Mira realized, recognized the Alpha King of the Wolfguard pack, even here, in enemy territory. "You are wounded, Wolfguard," a voice called out. It was her father, stepping forward, his expression cold and implacable. "You cannot fight us all. Surrender my daughter, and we will let you leave with your life." Darius laughed, a sound without humor. "I would rather die than give her up. She is mine, claimed and bonded. If you take her, you will have to kill me first." "Then so be it," Cale said, and Mira saw him shift, saw his body contort and reform into the massive wolf that was his other self. Around him the rest of the pack followed suit, a sea of fur and fangs and feral eyes. "No," Mira screamed. But it was too late. They were attacking, a wave of violence crashing toward the cottage with the force of an avalanche. Darius met them head-on. Despite his recent injuries, he was magnificent in battle, a force of nature that could not be contained. He shifted mid-leap, his body transforming into a massive black wolf that was easily twice the size of any of the Nightwind wolves, a beast of such power and ferocity that several of the attackers faltered. But numbers had their own power, and the Nightwind wolves were seasoned fighters. They came at him from all sides, teeth and claws seeking flesh, seeking to bring down the Alpha King through sheer overwhelming force. Mira watched in horror as blood began to stain the ground, as her mate fought for their lives against her own pack. She could not stand idle, could not simply watch as the man she loved was torn apart. Without thinking, without considering the consequences, she shifted, her smaller white wolf bursting forth and threw herself into the fray. She was not a fighter, had no training in combat, but desperation gave her a reckless courage. She went for her brother, her jaws clamping down on his leg, tearing through fur and muscle. He howled in pain and rage, turning on her, and she saw the moment he would have killed her, his own sister, without hesitation or remorse. But Darius was there, slamming into Cale with the force of a battering ram, sending him flying. He stood over Mira, his body a shield, his snarl a promise of death to anyone who came closer. Enough. The word was not shouted but spoken with such command that every wolf froze. Mira turned to see a figure emerging from the forest, an older woman with silver-shot hair and eyes that blazed with power and fury. Alpha Nightwind, the leader of Mira's pack. "What is the meaning of this madness?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the battle lust like a blade. "Why are my wolves attacking the Alpha King of the Wolfguard pack?" "He has corrupted your daughter," Mira's father said, his voice tight with anger. "Seduced her with lies, claimed her as his mate. It is deception, Alpha, a ploy to weaken our pack." The Alpha turned her gaze on Mira, and in those ancient eyes, she saw judgment and something that might have been pity. "Is this true, Mira? Has Darius Wolfguard claimed you as his mate?" "It is true," Mira said, shifting back to human form, standing naked and defiant before her Alpha. "He is my fated mate, Alpha. The bond cannot be denied, cannot be broken. I love him, and I will not give him up, even if it costs me my life." A ripple of shock ran through the gathered wolves. Fated mates were rare, sacred, a gift from the moon herself. To deny such a bond was to spit in the face of the divine. Alpha Nightwind's expression was unreadable as she turned to Darius, who had also shifted back to human form, his body tense and ready for violence. "And you, Alpha King? Do you claim this Omega as your fated mate?" "I do," Darius said without hesitation. "She is mine, bonded and claimed. I will kill anyone who tries to take her from me, even if it means war between our packs." The Alpha was silent for a long moment, her gaze moving between Mira and Darius, weighing, judging. Finally, she spoke. "If what you say is true, if you are indeed fated mates, then this changes everything. The moon does not make mistakes. If she has chosen to bind Wolfguard and Nightwind through the two of you, then perhaps the time has come to end the feud that has claimed so many lives." "Alpha, no," Kale protested. "The Wolfguards are our enemies. They have killed our kin, stolen our lands. We cannot simply forgive centuries of bloodshed because of some ridiculous notion of fated mates." "Silence," Alpha Nightwind snapped, and the force of her command made every wolf present lower their eyes in submission. "I am Alpha, and I will decide what is best for this pack. The feud has cost us too much, has weakened us at a time when we need strength. If this bond between Mira and Darius can bring peace, then I would be a fool to reject it." She turned back to Darius, her expression stern. "But peace will not come easily, Alpha King. There will be those in both our packs who resist, who cling to old hatreds. Are you prepared to fight for this? To risk everything for love?" "I am," Darius said without hesitation. "I will end the feud, Alpha Nightwind. I will forge a new alliance between our packs, one built on cooperation rather than competition. And anyone who stands in the way of that peace will answer to me." "Bold words," the Alpha said. "Let us see if you can back them up." She raised her hand, and the Nightwind wolves began to retreat, melting back into the forest. But not before Mira's brother cast her a look of such pure hatred that it chilled her to the bone. "You are dead to me," he said. "No longer my sister, no longer Nightwind. I hope he is worth the price you will pay." He shifted and ran, and Mira felt tears burn in her eyes. She had known there would be consequences, had known that choosing Darius meant losing what little connection she had to her birth pack, but knowing and experiencing were two different things, and the pain of rejection cut deeper than any claw. Darius pulled her into his arms, holding her as she shook with silent sobs. "I am sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I am so sorry." "Do not be," Mira said, pulling back to look at him through her tears. "I made my choice. I chose you, and I do not regret it. I will never regret it." The journey to Wolfguard territory took 2 days. Darius had sent word ahead, a carefully worded message that informed his pack that he was alive and returning with his fated mate. The response had been mixed, Mira knew. Some would welcome peace. Others would see her as an enemy, an interloper who did not belong. As they approached the Wolfguard compound, Mira felt her anxiety spike. The place was massive, a fortress carved from stone and wood, surrounded by high walls and guarded by warriors who watched their approach with suspicious eyes. She felt small and vulnerable, an Omega among Alphas, a Nightwind in Wolfguard territory. But Darius never left her side, his hand firm in hers, his presence a constant reassurance that she was not alone. They entered the great hall, and Mira was struck by the sheer size of it, the magnificence of the carved beams, and the enormous fireplace that dominated one wall. Wolves filled the space, hundreds of them, all turning to stare as their king entered with a white-haired Omega at his side. And at the far end of the hall, standing before the throne, was a man who could only be Marcus Bloodfang. He was tall, handsome in a sharp, cruel way, with dark hair and eyes that glittered with ambition and malice. "Cousin," Darius said, his voice carrying through the hall. "I am told you have been serving as regent in my absence. I thank you for your service, but as you can see, I have returned." "So I see," Marcus said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "And with a pet, no less. Tell me, cousin, does the great Alpha King now keep strays?" A growl rippled through the assembled wolves, anger at the disrespect shown to their king. But Darius remained calm, his expression giving nothing away. "This is Mira Nightwind, my fated mate and your future queen. You will show her respect, or you will answer to me." "Nightwind," Marcus spat the name like a curse. "You bring an enemy into our home, into our pack, and expect us to bow to her. Have you lost your mind?" "I have found my heart," Darius corrected, "and with it, the path to peace between our packs. The feud ends now, Marcus. I will unite Wolfguard and Nightwind, and anyone who opposes me will be dealt with." "You cannot do this," Marcus said, his voice rising. "The pack will never accept it. I will never accept it." "Then you are welcome to challenge me," Darius said softly, dangerously. "If you believe you have the strength to take my throne, to claim my crown, then step forward now and face me in ritual combat." For a long moment, Marcus simply stared, and Mira saw the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of odds. But whatever he saw in Darius, whatever he read in the Alpha King's unflinching gaze, made him step back. "I meant no disrespect, Alpha," Marcus said, lowering his eyes in submission. "I serve only the pack, and if you believe this union serves us, then I will support it." "Liar," Mira's wolf whispered. "Traitor." She knew, in that moment, that Marcus was the one who had tried to kill Darius, knew it with a certainty that transcended proof, and she knew that he was not finished, that he would try again, would wait and plan and strike when they least expected it. But Darius was aware too. She felt it through their bond, felt his wariness, his readiness. Marcus might have retreated, but the battle was far from over. The feast that night was a test, a trial by fire, as the Wolfguard pack scrutinized their king's chosen mate. Mira sat at Darius's side at the high table, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her, judging her, finding her wanting. But Darius was magnificent, his presence commanding, and his support of her absolute. He introduced her as his mate, his queen, and made it clear that anyone who challenged her would face his wrath. Slowly, grudgingly, the pack began to accept her, not out of love, but out of respect for their king. As the night wore on, as wine flowed and tensions eased, Darius leaned close to her, his breath warm against her ear. "You are doing beautifully," he murmured. "I am so proud of you." "They hate me," Mira whispered back. "They see me as an outsider, an enemy." "They fear change," Darius corrected. "But they will learn. You will win them over with your kindness, your strength. I have faith in you, Mira, more faith than you have in yourself." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that time would heal the wounds between the packs. But she could not shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of a precipice, that one wrong step would send them plummeting into darkness. The days following the feast tested Mira in ways she had never imagined. Each morning, she woke in Darius's chambers, in the massive bed that seemed to swallow her small frame, and felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her shoulders. The Wolfguard pack watched her every move, waiting for her to fail, to prove that she was unworthy of their king. But Mira had survived isolation before. She knew how to endure hostile stares, how to hold her head high in the face of rejection. What she had not expected was the small kindnesses that began to appear, like flowers pushing through snow. An older woman named Elena, who served as the pack healer, came to her chambers one morning with a basket of herbs and a tentative smile. She had heard of Mira's healing skills, she explained, and wondered if Mira might share some of her knowledge. They spent the afternoon together, talking of remedies and techniques, and when Elena left, she squeezed Mira's hand and called her queen with genuine warmth. A group of young pups, curious and fearless in the way only children can be, approached her in the gardens one day. They had never seen white hair before, they told her, eyes wide with wonder. Was she made of moonlight? Was she magic? Mira laughed, a sound of pure joy, and spent the afternoon playing with them, telling them stories her grandmother had once told her. When their mothers came to collect them, they looked at Mira with something that might have been respect, might have been the beginning of acceptance. Even among the warriors, the hardened fighters who had spent lifetimes viewing Nightwind as the enemy, there were those who began to see her as more than just a political inconvenience. She tended their wounds without judgment, listened to their stories without prejudice, and slowly, so slowly, walls began to crumble. But not everyone was willing to embrace change. Marcus's supporters, wolves who had hoped to see him take the throne, viewed Mira with open hostility. They whispered in corners, spread rumors that she had bewitched their king, that she was a spy sent to destroy them from within. More than once, Mira found threatening messages left in places only she would see, crude drawings of a white wolf with its throat torn out. Darius's response to these threats was swift and brutal. He made examples of those caught spreading dissent, stripping them of rank and privilege, making it clear that any attack on Mira was an attack on him. He was a different man with his pack than he was with her, Mira realized. With her, he was gentle, tender, patient. With them, he was the Alpha King, fierce and uncompromising, a force of nature that demanded obedience. She loved both versions of him, loved the way he could be savage and protective with the world, yet soft and vulnerable with her. It was a duality that made her feel cherished, special, as if she alone was worthy of seeing the man beneath the crown. One night, after a particularly difficult council meeting where several elders had openly questioned the wisdom of the Nightwind Alliance, Darius came to their chambers radiating tension and barely suppressed rage. Mira was already in bed, reading by candlelight, and she set her book aside as he entered, her heart aching at the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "Come here," she said softly. And he obeyed, crossing the room with those long, powerful strides that never failed to make her pulse quicken. He climbed into bed beside her, and she pulled him into her arms, cradling his head against her chest, running her fingers through his long black hair in a soothing rhythm. "Tell me," she murmured. "They question everything," he said, his voice muffled against her. "Every decision, every change. They cling to old hatreds like lifelines, as if letting go would mean losing themselves. I am their king, and yet they fight me at every turn. Change is frightening," Mira said gently, "especially when it challenges everything they have ever believed. But you are doing the right thing, Darius. I know it, and deep down, they know it too. They will come around. We just need to be patient." "I am not a patient man," Darius admitted, lifting his head to look at her. "Not when it comes to you. Every day that someone looks at you with hatred, every moment that you feel unwelcome in what should be your home, it drives me to madness. I want to make them see you as I see you, want to make them understand what a gift you are." "They will," Mira promised. "In time, they will." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and full of a desperation that made her heart clench. She responded with all the love she felt, pouring herself into the kiss, into the connection that bound them. And when he made love to her that night, it was with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes, a reverence that made her feel like the most precious thing in his world. Because she was. Despite the politics, despite the resistance, despite the danger that lurked in shadows, she was his world, and he was hers. The bond between them grew stronger each day, until Mira could sometimes see through his eyes, feel his emotions as vividly as her own. It was disorienting at first, overwhelming, but Darius taught her how to manage it, how to maintain boundaries while still staying connected. They were becoming one in ways that transcended the physical, their souls intertwining until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Meanwhile, the negotiations with Alpha Nightwind continued. Darius spent long hours in discussions, sometimes bringing Mira with him as proof of the bond that linked their packs, sometimes going alone when the topics were too political, too fraught with potential violence. The peace treaty was taking shape, slowly but surely, and with it came hope that the centuries of bloodshed might finally end. But Marcus watched it all with eyes that burned with resentment. Mira saw him at every gathering, saw the way he studied Darius, looking for weaknesses, for opportunities. She tried to warn Darius again, tried to make him understand that his cousin was more than just bitter, that he was dangerous. "I know," Darius said when she voiced her concerns. "I have known for some time that Marcus is the one who tried to kill me. I have been gathering evidence, building a case. When I move against him, it must be with absolute proof or risk dividing the pack further." "What if he strikes first?" Mira asked. "What if he tries again?" "Then I will kill him," Darius said simply, "but I do not want it to come to that. He is family, twisted though he has become. I would prefer to exile him, to give him a chance at redemption far from here." Mira hoped he was right, hoped that mercy would be enough. But in her heart, she knew that men like Marcus did not accept exile. They accepted only victory or death, and Marcus had made his choice long ago. As the full moon approached, as the date for the official unification ceremony drew near, tension in both packs reached a fever pitch. This would be the moment that defined their future, the moment when centuries of hatred would either be transcended or reaffirmed. Wolves from both sides prepared with a mixture of excitement and dread, knowing that history was being made, for better or worse. Mira spent the day before the ceremony in prayer and preparation. She bathed in sacred waters, adorned herself with the traditional jewelry of a Wolfguard queen, white gold and moonstone that gleamed against her pale skin. Darius had commissioned a dress for her, something that honored both her Nightwind heritage and her new position, silver fabric that flowed like water and was embroidered with wolves in black and white, forever intertwined. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked regal, powerful, nothing like the timid Omega who had lived in isolation at the edge of her pack's territory. Darius had done this, had seen her true worth and helped her find it within herself. He found her there, standing before the mirror, and the look in his eyes when he saw her stole her breath. "You are magnificent," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "A queen in every sense of the word." "I am terrified," she admitted. "Good," he said, coming to stand behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. "Only fools are fearless. But know this, my love. Tomorrow, we will stand together before both our packs, and we will forge a new future. And no matter what happens, no matter what resistance we face, I will be beside you. Always beside you. Always," she echoed. And in that moment, she believed it. Believed that they could overcome anything, as long as they faced it together. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of politics and diplomacy. Darius worked tirelessly to forge a peace treaty between Wolfguard and Nightwind, negotiating with Alpha Nightwind and her council, addressing concerns and grievances that stretched back generations. It was exhausting, frustrating work. And more than once, Mira thought the whole thing would collapse. But slowly, painfully, progress was made. Borders were redrawn, territories shared, trade agreements established. And through it all, Darius remained steadfast, his vision of a united future never wavering. Mira found her own role in this new world. She established a healing center, a place where wolves from both packs could come for treatment without fear or judgment. Her skills, once dismissed by her own pack, became invaluable, and she found herself respected, valued in a way she had never experienced before. But darkness lurked beneath the surface. Marcus grew more resentful with each passing day, his smiles growing colder, his eyes harder. Mira knew he was planning something, could feel it in the tension that never quite left his shoulders, in the way he watched Darius with barely concealed hatred. She tried to warn Darius, but he was confident in his ability to handle his cousin, confident that Marcus would not dare move against him openly. He was wrong. The attack came on the night of the full moon, during the ceremony that would officially unite the two packs. Wolves from both Wolfguard and Nightwind had gathered in the Great Clearing, a sacred space where pack rituals were performed. Darius and Alpha Nightwind stood together, preparing to speak the words that would bind their packs in alliance. And then chaos erupted. Marcus struck from the shadows, a silver blade in his hand, aimed straight at Darius's heart. But Mira had been watching, had sensed the danger through their bond, and she threw herself in front of her mate, taking the blade meant for him. Pain exploded through her chest, white-hot and all-consuming. She felt the silver burning through her, poisoning her, and she knew she was dying. The world slowed to a crawl. She saw Darius's face contort with horror and rage, saw him catch her as she fell, saw Marcus's shock as he realized what he had done. And then Darius was shifting, was tearing into Marcus with a savagery that was beyond primal, beyond rational. It was over in seconds. Marcus lay dead, his throat torn out, his blood staining the sacred ground, and Darius was cradling Mira, his hands desperately trying to stanch the blood that poured from her wound. "No," he was saying, over and over. "No, Mira. Stay with me. Do not leave me. Please, do not leave me." She wanted to tell him it was all right, that she did not regret her choice, that saving him was worth any price. But the words would not come. The darkness was rising, pulling her down into cold oblivion. And then, impossibly, there was light. It poured from the sky, brilliant and blinding, and Mira felt warmth flood through her, felt the silver's poison burning away, felt her wound beginning to close. Around her, wolves from both packs had shifted, had formed a circle, and they were howling, a sound of mourning and rage and desperate hope. The moon had answered. She had witnessed this love, this sacrifice, and she had decided that the story was not yet finished. When Mira opened her eyes, she was in Darius's arms, alive, healed, marked by a scar that would always remind her of how close she had come to losing everything. And when she looked into his eyes, she saw tears streaming down his face, saw love and relief and wonder. "You saved me," he said, his voice breaking. "You took a blade meant for me. And I would do it again," Mira said, 1,000 times over. He kissed her then, in front of both packs, in front of the moon herself, a kiss that sealed their bond and proclaimed their love to the world. And in that moment, as the wolves around them began to howl in celebration rather than mourning, Mira felt the last pieces of her broken heart knit back together. She had spent her life feeling like an outsider, like someone who did not belong. But here, in this man's arms, surrounded by wolves who had come together to save her, she finally understood. She had always belonged. She had simply needed to find the courage to claim her place. The union of the packs was completed that night, sealed in blood and love and sacrifice. It was not perfect. There would still be challenges, still be wolves who resented the change and longed for the old ways. But the foundation had been laid, a new path forged. Darius and Mira stood together as Alpha King and Queen, rulers of a united pack that spanned both Wolfguard and Nightwind territories. They faced resistance and doubt, but they faced it together, their bond unbreakable, their love a beacon that guided their people toward a future built on peace rather than war. In the years that followed, The story of the Omega who saved the Alpha King became legend, a tale told around fires and passed down through generations. It was a story of courage and sacrifice, of love that transcended boundaries and healed ancient wounds. But for Mira and Darius, it was simply their beginning. Their forever started the night she found him bleeding in the forest. Two souls destined to meet, destined to love, destined to change the world. And they did. One day at a time, one choice at a time, building a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. Because some loves are too powerful to be contained, some bonds too sacred to be broken, and some destinies too profound to be denied. Mira stood on the balcony of the great hall, looking out over lands that now belonged to both Wolfguard and Nightwind, and she felt Darius's arms wrap around her from behind, felt his lips press against her temple. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one," she answered, leaning back into his embrace. "This is everything I never knew I needed." "And I love you for it," he said. "For your courage, for your heart, for saving me in every way a person can be saved." She turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had become her entire world. "We saved each other," she corrected. "That is what mates do." He smiled then, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face, that made him look young and happy and free. And in that smile, Mira saw their future, bright and full of promise, a forever written in the stars. They kissed as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, two halves of a whole finally complete. The path had been hard, the journey fraught with danger and pain. But they had walked it together, and that had made all the difference. In the end, love had been enough. It had united packs, had healed wounds, had proven stronger than fear or hatred or tradition. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, as wolves from both packs gathered below to celebrate their unity, Mira and Darius stood together, Alpha King and Omega Queen, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they faced everything. Together, always together, forever. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.